Hello, good afternoon or morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the second session with me and futurist Cecily Sommers, with whom I already had a sort of an introductory talk. We are both futurists, and we wanted to know each other, how we actually think and how we see our work as futurists. And now this session is about going deeper into think like a futurist. So how is it to think like a futurist? How is it different to just do any kind of a thoughts around the future? Because that's something that kind of describes us as a futurist, that we have a certain ideas how to think when you're thinking about what might happen in the future. And so when I had started to work around those concepts many years ago, I basically frame my own thinking around three particular themes. The first is about how to depart from short-term to long-term thinking. What does it take organizations, companies to do that? Because in most of the time, they have to, by definition, to be very short-term, very tactical. And often it happens that what happens next is kind of an opportunistic way of looking at and doing things inside the company and treating the customers alike, comes overwhelming. And then they start to rethink, okay, we need to divert from that and build our ideas on the more the long term. The second aspect is the way that we are seeing the connections between the different phenomena that we are facing as an organization, as a company. And often we compartmentalize those issues and challenges according to the ways that the organization is being organized. So here is the marketing, here is the production, and so forth and so forth. And each see their own problems in their own ways because they have a certain function in the organization. But we as a futurists often have to go deeper than that and see that there is a deep connectivity between each of the ways that we have to deal with issues that come inside the organization and the challenges that we have to meet. And that's why there is this idea of looking at things in a more comprehensive way, and we call it systems way. We call it in a way that we see any organization actually as a system, and then we start to look at things in a rather different way than when we are looking at as an individual and separate acts and thoughts. And the third aspect is the idea of the complexity, because it's very obvious for all of us that the amount of the technology, amount of the interaction in the world, in many different ways have increased dramatically, and that asks very different ways of us to deal with this complexity, and embracing this complexity, deal with that, even serve from that, ask again different capacities from our organization. So those have been some of the thoughts that I have been working with while dealing with these issues with different kind of organization. But now we are talking about your thoughts and your ideas about how to think differently than we normally think about the organizations, about the future. So, Cecily, to launch my first question, think like a futurist. What does it mean to you, and how did you come into your own ways of looking at that particular sort of ways to deal with any issues inside the organizations?
Well, it's good to be with you again, Markku, and thank you so much for having me for a conversation where we get to really dive into what it means to think like a futurist. And what brought me there was that I began in my earlier consulting work as a brand strategist. And again, the two questions there, which I think we discussed last time, that I feel are fundamental to strategy are: who are you? What's your business about? And where are you going? And so it's very common in brand strategy to be talking about the context in which your business is operating, meaning trends. And I felt like trends were, of course, too short term and kept organizations managing more reactively than proactively. And so it also had a sense of doing comparison, like what are our competitors doing as opposed to what is it that we bring to the market that's unique. And I do find that when organizations really make strategic decisions according to their mission, to their unique offering and point of view, that everything goes far more efficiently, and you have, again, more value to add when you do that. So that's very often, and you'll see that this comes into my thinking today, that we always want to reference first what's unique about you. What are you actually even creating from? Why do you do what you do? In foresight, we use a term often called potentials. We're not making predictions. We're actually beginning to look at what is the emerging potential in the environment that we can imagine and build into a scenario so that if this is one of the futures that are coming, we can meet it appropriately. What I love about this word potential is that we're looking at the intersection of what's our potential as an organization with regard to our vision, our mission, our purpose. And we're looking to find the intersection between our potential, this works for individuals too, my potential, and the future potential. So this is the work that I'm dedicated to. And as I had begun to say, that trends just seem to be too surface oriented. And I wanted to go under the surface. How do we understand change? And this is the systems point of view that you were referencing. It accommodates and accounts for the complexity you were also addressing so that we can see change and the roots of all trends in these systems. Now, you and I will talk about my view of that next time when we talk, when we relate to what it means to see like a futurist, which is how do we see those systems of change, those forces of change, and where these trends come from. But foresight for me is, and I think probably for everyone, is it's really about good thinking. And, and functionally what futurists do is a lot of research. So for me, what it means to think like a futurist begins with asking really good questions and being able to scope the research, the type of future that you will be looking to and why it matters to you. Again, why it matters to you in this potential. Yeah.
Very good. Can I ask you just what you said about I think what struck me, you said that there needs to be a quality, not only in the thinking, but in the questions. So what are the types of questions that we need to be asking? Because often what I see is that either we go very broad, we ask open questions, and in some cases they're very good one to start so that you're not kind of a limit or narrow too much about kind of a pointing as it was the answer already there, but you leave it open. And sometimes you need to be very focused to kind of to extract something essential out and give it a kind of a possibility to be kind of unearthed. So the question goes, what are the elements and how do you do a good question?
Yeah. There is an art to doing good questions, or what I refer to as best questions. And I've devised that phrase in part because I'm really wanting it to counter the emphasis in so many organizations on best practices. So I just want to start there by addressing best practices and my view of them. Best practices, which is very often people will start when they have a hunch on here's an idea that we need to pursue. And I know that we touched on this last time that, the future is a fuzzy proposition. We don't really know what it holds. And often we don't really know what we want from it. So as you're saying, we're wanting to define that on the front end of what do we care about and why do we pursue this in the future? So because we don't know it, we begin with good questions. Very often in strategy, people will say, again, it's kind of like the trend mindset. What is everybody else doing? What are the best practices in this field? And so I refer to that tendency as best practicide, because what happens when we begin with best practices is we kill off the opportunity to see as many possibilities and potentials that are there. We've already narrowed ourselves. The other thing that we do with best practices is we stay focused on our industry. And the kind of work that we do is really about stepping away from all constraints to really take a wide view of what change is, first of all, and what change at a global scale and its implications for your industry, what those implications industry are for your organization, and then ultimately to the issue at hand. So it's a tiered ranking of implications back into what are you up to? Who are you? And where are you going?
Yeah.
So we want to ask some questions on the front end, and we haven't even gotten to that, but you have a comment?
Yeah, there was one other thing that you brought in, and I think it sort of resonates very well what you just said, which is that if we think about the uniqueness aspect, and this is what we try to carve out of any organization to bring the best of the uniqueness in a way, and against that, I guess you bring this idea that, well, best practices are great, but if we are following them, we are not kind of bringing in our uniqueness. Thus, we are losing some of the potential which is there. And I think this idea of the uniqueness is a very peculiar for a type of a futures thinking that I embrace very much, and which brings it that this is not a kind of a something that you can take from the textbook or in any sense from the outside. This is something that you need to develop yourself, because you are a unique. Any organization is a unique combination. So that isn't that we are actually kind of striving to help to happen, and thus also the type of the questions in the beginning that do not kind of too much narrow down of your potential.
Yeah, well, everything, as far as I'm concerned, comes from purpose. I mean, it's how we navigate the future. Really, it has to be really the pointy end of the spear that we throw it is like it has to be directed by purpose. And I'm going to take you through that. There's a way that I do this and that integrates purpose into this, what it means to think like a futurist. I just wanted to also say this gives us a why when we're talking about how to frame a good question or a best question, is to begin with, why does this matter to you? Why is it important to your mission, to your purpose? And why is it important now? I also find that it's important to ask, what do you mean by that? So defining things is a beautiful way into a better question. So I will say, I had a client who was in the remittances, the financial remittances market. And that means that people leave their home country, go to another country, make money there to send back to their home country. And that's a complicated proposition. There are regulations and there are languages and there are cultures and there's, certainly currencies and many other things. But it's an enormous flow of money around the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was contacted by the chief technology officer who said, we've just, we're now in 60 countries, we're doing all this. We're trying to figure out what platforms we should use, and can you help us? And I said, no, that's not really my thing. But tell me why this is important to you. And what began to unfold is that they had not really found their position in the market, and that they were just cobbling solutions together and trying to compete without any real firm foundation. So it was interesting because it took us back into defining their purpose in a way that they never had. Many companies will have a strong mission. We want to be the best, and the one has the best customer services and so forth. But what is your unique point of view on it? And so we did workshops around that really shifted their strategy overall. And I'll tell you a little bit of this story because it's a beautiful story.
Mm-hmm.
This company was begun by a refugee from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And as we began to really dive into this work, you begin to relate to the heroic nature of what it means to leave your home country, your culture, your family, and to move into another in order to carry that love with you. And in many cases, to jump the borders. And so we began to develop all of our strategy and the modeling for this business and their solutions based on what it means to be a border jumper.
Mm.
And to relate to everybody in this chain as a hero, and to find the nodes of this chain as the place that we would build out. And then we could build in our, how are we imagining the future? Now we want to find out the context of these people, and in particular, some of the shops that are in markets where these exchanges take place. And who's there, what are their needs, so that we can really build it out and build scenarios that are human-centered based on the purpose of the company. So
Very
these are the
impressive.
ways that I pursue these questions.
Mm-hmm.
For a large technology company that I worked with, where they wanted to know the future of leadership, for me, that's a little too broad. And really, in asking the questions again, why does this matter to you? What would you like to see come from this? How
Mm-hmm.
will it impact your business when you have this information?
Mm-hmm.
And what
Mm-hmm.
was really surfaced then is we're asking ourselves, is the type of leadership development we're offering the leaders who are in fact influencing the future, are we doing right by them? Are we preparing them for the future in the most appropriate way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the answer really was to the kind of work that we would focus on is ultimately what needs to be developed in leaders to meet the future that is unfolding, such that they are doing it in an ethical manner, that they are prepared to lead this enormous organization with global
Mm-hmm.
impact. And maybe standard
Mm-hmm.
conventional methods are not the way anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how
Oh,
I
yeah.
begin to focus on the questions of,
Ah.
it has to have a good business case.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, why are you doing this, and what's the impact before you? And we need to
Mm-hmm.
establish that before anything else.
Mm-hmm. But it's so important, it seems, that as you're doing that, as you're doing that deep dive in with those questions, you really need to um, um, take as an aim to really to to bring it to the surface, the purpose, which obviously is there, but oftentimes maybe is either not well communicated or even in some case forgotten, or maybe the context has a little bit changed, and you need to kind of rethink what is the purpose. But I guess your case also shows that quite often the the purpose comes that there has been an experience that has taught something, and that creates sometimes a, a crazy idea. Nike founder Phil Knight was talking about his crazy ideas in the beginning that became a real. Um, but anyway, it's a purpose that is there, that builds also the mission. And but without that, I think that's what you're saying. You are just a kind of a just try to uh, take from here and there bits and pieces without having this kind of an underlying umbrella there that you can kind of rely on. Is that what you're seeing?
I just consider it good listening and probing. It's really my orientation is my job is to fall in love with my client and what they care about, and I always do. And I can do that when we get to truly the heart of why it matters. And, similar, another example is working with a large pet food company, that wanted to know about the future of pet ownership and how it might be changing. And the ultimate question that we were asking is, why do people own pets anyway? What's the nature of this relationship? So we can place that need, that human state into, now we can take a look at how far out are we looking? What's that future hold? We can then focus in on how technology is changing people and how they live and their relationship to pets, how demographics may be changing, and how there may be new policies and so forth that are affecting the way people live. But what we're placing at the center of that inquiry is, why do people own pets anyway? And if we can answer that inside of all the conditions that are changing, we come up with something that truly matters and can have great impact for them and their business. So that's what it means. And very often in the course of that, we're really doing first principles thinking. How do we deconstruct this? In my vernacular, I say we need to get philosophical before we get practical. Right? And so this question, the framing the question, is about getting philosophical, asking the big why. Why does this matter? In order for us to do the foresight work so that we can build the scenarios where we get the what of the future might look like. And then we reverse engineer it into the how do we get from here to there. And guess what? That's the time we can use best practices, but only after we've gotten our what. But we begin with why, do the work to get to what, reverse engineer for how. And now that we get to how, we can say, how can we do this most efficiently? Now that we have something that's unique to us, let's benchmark it against others. But I save benchmarking or industry comparison until the very last, because I do not want to interfere with, again, this unique insight that is going to inform this particular client and their business. And that makes a difference. Yeah.
Can I just make one more question about this purpose thing? Because I think that there is another line of the conversation that has been going on with decades inside the corporate world, where was the paradigm of one time. I think it was Jack Welch and many others who say the business of the business is business, and that's it. We run our businesses, and that's our purpose. And the mission and everything else. So, and that is our contribution to the society. Now, these days, obviously, we think differently, and we think that, well, in order to run any business in our society, it has a multiple outcomes, multiple consequences, multiple impacts. some of which we are aware and some of which we are not aware. But anyway, we need to be much more reflective what type of the impacts there are. And and we need to be much more clear in what sense we are contributing something positive into the society, into all around the world, not just in our clients, but our society at large. And I see again in my own work that time and again we have to deal with this question as well, very fundamentally. Okay, guys, you have a great business, you're doing great work for a client, but what does it do for society? What is your contribution there? Have you seen in your own work that this type of questioning, which is a big open question, is also something that is steering there with your clients?
Yes and no. So I think the two things track together. I believe there is still the business of business is the business is, when you're talking about publicly traded companies, that actually is a motivating factor, and it is how things get measured. And so I know that there isn't any business that is looking to the future that doesn't have one primary directive: they want to grow. So they're looking for growth. Now, to your point, I think where purpose comes in is you have to have a competitive advantage. And the competitive advantage, in my view, is your purpose. The thing that makes you unique is that. And when we get to these visions of the future, that's when we start to say, and we need to account for all stakeholders. I do something which I call a maximum value scenario, where we are taking a look at, when we get to do this big idea, now let's check it against maximum value for all stakeholders. So I see it in that way. We still have to answer to the business needs. And if we don't, it will not latch on. And that's, again, one of the things I'm checking out early on in the scoping or questioning is, why does this matter to you? Why does it matter to your purpose that you do it? But also, what kind of outcomes are we looking for? And we have to, I do as a futurist, as a business futurist anyway, I take that into consideration. What kind of outcomes do we want for your business? Let's go solve for that. And, those outcomes are going to be very businessy. And they should be, because it's a business. So yes, I would say all of those factors are in there. Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Cecily, I understood that you also want to show something, how you actually do that work once you get into.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce us?
I would love to. So I'm going to set this up for you. What I've done is I say that, again, we don't know what is happening in the future, so that we are really solving for X, right? And we want to make sure that our questions are good, and then we're going to account for all the factors that can, get us to the X, just as we do in an old algebraic approach. So I'm going to share with you solving for X, which I believe is how we set up our thinking and scoping for any foresight project. Frankly, any good business problem that we want to solve. So I have something that I want to share with you that helps us. And so you can see here, this is solving for X, as I refer to it. And when we take a look at that, we have a sweet little professor helping us out, and are setting up that, again, X is this thing we don't know quite yet. And when we are beginning to ask these front-end questions and doing the discovery process in any project, we want to begin with, how many years out are we looking? What's our horizon? What will be the conditions of people's lives in that horizon? What needs are we trying to solve for? And the common denominator here, the thing that we must be answering to throughout, the thread that I pull through in all of my work, is purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So if we step through this, again, is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 50 years? If we're looking at what X is and asking good questions, we should have a good idea of, again, what is it and why does it matter? What implications will it have if we look 50 years out? And if you are an energy company, that may be, in fact, a really good horizon. In my work, I used to feel that 10 years was a very natural maturity horizon for a lot of what we were looking at. It may still be the case, but we have to decide with the client what makes sense. Things are moving so fast now. I think very often we're doing, closer to, I would say, 5 to 10, because we have to also take a look at each one of those steps as we go forward.
Mm-hmm.
We want to define the needs at the heart of the issue. And as I had said, in some of my examples so far, why do people own pets anyway? Or what is it that leaders really need to know, do, and be in a future that looks like X, right? Those are the needs, and how might our training be affected by it? Those are needs that we are pointing to. What are the needs of the people who are in the system of a remittance company, the heroes, the border jumpers?
Mm.
Was that established? And so each one of these, we're going to be doing interviews when it comes to needs. When I was doing the pet ownership one, it was going out into dog parks and animal shelters and people's homes to really investigate that. And then we look at the conditions. That's for me when I start to bring the foresight in, where we're asking, with this amount of time further out, with our question well defined, knowing the needs that we want to satisfy, now let's see how those needs will look in 10 years' time. How will people be living? And then, of course, we want to maybe bound it by geography if that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some other elements around this really impacts people's home life more than others. But we're going to take a full look at how are the conditions, and we'll talk about how we do that next time when we talk about see like a futurist. That's when we do the real foresight work,
Mm-hmm.
to determine what people will look like at home, work, family, etc. And then the thing that we're always asking is, what's your motivating aim for this life, for this work, for this project, for your whole organization? Let's make sure that that is our thread. So that's how I set it up. And sometimes we find that people are, it's like a three-legged chair between knowing the conditions, the needs, and the purpose. If their purpose isn't well developed, sometimes we need to go and do that. And as I mentioned, my background is in brand strategy, so I'm well equipped to do that and really make that sometimes a part of the process. If the
Mm-hmm.
needs are not currently well known, we may need to devote more time to doing that research. So each one of these factors really, really matters. And I find that when we do that, we end up with not just a vision of the future, but a strategy that's actionable.
Mm.
So
And I
let me
can I just
out of that. Yeah.
just one note on that, what you just said. Um, so your strategy as a helper, as a consultant, as a futurist that starts with understanding the fundamental motivation of the people, and and the question of, okay, there is this motivation, and with this motivation, you have sort of built now this company at this stage. My question to you is that, uh, when you do this kind of going deep down, uh, this is the beginning to understand what is to think like a futurist. I wanted to go sort of make the bridge to where we actually started,
Yes.
and people to understand that, am I correct? Am I on the right track when I'm trying to track your thinking now here, how you dive deeper into this purpose, motivation, and actually engagement aspect, so that builds the very foundation that you can start to think anything meaningful about the future.
Wholeheartedly agree. Absolutely. Again, I feel like, it's the North Star, isn't it? The
Hmm.
future is wide, 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 wide open. And if we're just trying to boil the ocean, as they say, of what does the future hold, we can't do that. I can't do it. I won't do
Mhm,
it.
mhm,
And so what we scope for is what's your purpose
mhm.
as
Yeah.
fundamental. It's got to be your future, having referenced the future, but we're really trying to find out what's your future. And so it's why we do what we do. And it also is in service to this idea you deserve to have a future that is a fulfillment of your purpose.
Hmm.
Let's make sure that it's meeting people's needs. Let's make sure that you matter to them. Let's make sure that you're relevant for the changing context. I refer to this, I think we mentioned it last time, as R cubed OI, because we're really solving for three things, three R's. Will you be relevant in the horizon time that we're investigating?
Mhm,
It contributes to your long-term resilience when you ask that question. And that's why it's important to engage with foresight in this work for strategy. And of course, the business of business is business idea is we have to make sure that it's connected to revenue and to some kind of
mhm,
growth,
mhm,
that it matters to the business on its way. So relevance, resilience, and revenue. And, we may have mentioned this in our introductory conversation as well, that, what we're talking about is how do we evolve?
mhm,
What's the life force that we have? What's our
mhm,
signature purpose to be
mhm,
here?
mhm,
And evolution asks us to
mhm,
be relevant because if we're not, we die out. And so this is really about taking that into a future's
mhm,
perspective. And we as futurists are
mhm,
equipped to walk people through that, bring the models, the methodologies,
mhm,
to do the research that
mhm,
informs now a view.
mhm,
What can we do? Now that we're informed, what is it that we really are uniquely equipped to build? And that gives us that competitive advantage because it is tied to our purpose.
mhm.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, very, very exciting. I think the idea that questioning the relevance actually brings us to this point of understanding that unless we are bringing our own uniqueness, and our uniqueness again is built on our own purpose, uh, we 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 can only make a kind of a, otherwise it's kind of the universe of the future universe is a very random if we don't have any anchor, and this anchor is our idea of the purpose, our idea to be unique, and then sort of test that our uniqueness against the time, so to say, against the future, so that it's something that motivates us. But then the question is that, fine, does it also motivate our clients? Does it also gives us the purpose that is actually becoming something useful and interesting for our clients and for society at large?
Yeah.
And yeah, but again, the foundation has to be there first, and then what happens next?
Yeah. So, in the pet food company example that I've been using, what we found when we asked the question, why do people own pets anyway? And then what our research really revealed is that, in fact, for many people, having pets in their lives makes them better humans, that their performance goes up as a family. For some people, it's, a part of their healing and healthcare. For others, having an animal near them makes them more productive in their work, or better students or athletes, all kinds of things. We really began to see you are not necessarily, and this was the, part of the real insight that hit the strategy for this company is, you may think that what you're doing is developing food that is nutrition in the bowl. And we was like, your impact on the world goes beyond the bowl. You're really in the human welfare business with pets as a conduit to that. So it then expanded their territory of where do you get to have a seat at the table. So if hospitals, want to bring you to the table in a conversation of how do we design for pets to be a part of healing, or work environments, as more people at the time were really doing more co-working, or maybe in home environments. Are there ways in which you can do that? Education, family well-being, relationships, self-esteem, all kinds of things, love, empathy. You get to have those conversations as a pet food company and to position yourself. And so that in this case, their business aim was to have 10 million more pets in loving homes in 5 years. So that gave us something very specific to solve for, and then some strategies to come out of it. So yes, that purpose and that getting philosophical piece, it expands what you think and how you think about the nature of the issue you want to engage with, which is why I always go outside of the industry. We are borrowing from social sciences, anthropology, psychology, other cultures, technology, all kinds of things. So it's not so strict. We have to understand the philosophical truth and nature of the issue that we're doing, or, the border jumpers, the heroic nature of these people. Now we know what we're investigating and why we're investigating it. So I do want to also share with you that when we do that, and I talk about the maximum value scenario, and I do want to, by the way, just say much of this work is in a book by the same title called Think Like a Futurist. And the subtitle is meaningful for me. So we need to know what changes, what doesn't change, in order to come to what's next. So the subtitle is Know What Changes, What Doesn't, and What's Next. And what doesn't change is where our strategy needs to be anchored. And in my view, what doesn't change is your purpose shouldn't change. Human nature doesn't change at its core. So study it. That's how we get to the needs. The other thing that doesn't change, in my view, are the forces of change. And again, we'll look at that next time when we investigate what it means to see like a futurist. But those have some universality and constancy to it, even though what they produce doesn't. But how we view change really is also doesn't. So we want to anchor ourselves when it comes to strategy on purpose. That should never change. We are always solving for human needs, and we should be looking to the forces to help us divine that. So I'll pause, but then I do want to build out maximum value scenario for you as well.
Yes, please go ahead. Talk more about it.
So by the time that, we set up this solving for X, now let's go do the work. And it's so fun and it's so juicy because now we know why it matters and we're on fire with it. And we're doing workshops together and doing the investigation. And we begin to get a view of the future, which once we have our scenarios in hand, I push a little harder into the maximum value scenario where we're viewing each of the stakeholders and we're going back to our purpose. And we're going now with our key insight about we're really about human welfare. Where else could we play? And we push it. So I do what's called an else check.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is in this picture? Where else should we be playing or looking? What else might we do? Who are the partners that might be there? What are the kind of strategies and investments that we might need to do? Like, let's fill out that scenario with its maximum value.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we really get not just scenarios, but we get a vision. We get a vision that's informed by purpose, by the needs and the insights that we got about those needs and the world as
Mm-hmm.
it's changing in the horizon time that we
Mm-hmm.
chose. And we've pushed it into, again, that stakeholder view, and also give them an opportunity to say, you now get to drop all considerations about time, money, anything. You get to have it all in this scenario. Let's build out exactly what it could be so that you know this is really what we are meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry yet. We can worry about factoring reality back in the next phase, which is to say, okay, we've decided this is 10 years out or 5 years, whatever. Let's reverse engineer. Where
Mm-hmm.
do we need to be at the halfway point of that
Mm-hmm.
timeline?
No.
What resources, partners, and other things would we have to play?
Mm-hmm.
Let's now half it again. Where would we need to be in 2 years' time, 1 year time, 6 months, 3 months, so that we get to have that plan.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan phase, after we have that, now we get to go benchmark it against competitors. Who else? Anybody else doing this? How do we make ours even more? Now we know we can package it, we can market it, we can benchmark against it, we
Mm-hmm.
can get into best practices. But we
Mm-hmm.
save how for last. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. It sort of the way that you describe how to arrive at the vision um, is actually sort of a looking at full potential that there is inside the organization, and sort of make it visible, uh, and make it also approachable and concrete, so that it's not only something that is in the mind of the founder or a couple of guys on the top, but it's actually something that can kind of stimulate the whole organization. And so I wanted to ask about this because there are very different ways how we see actually how to arrive to that vision, uh, and 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 yours is 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 building on this kind of a foundational part that we have gone through this conversation. Um, but the other way of looking at that is that, but who are the part of this? Who do we engage with building of this idea? What is our potential? What is our maximum? Uh, how did you describe
Maximum value scenario.
maximum value scenario? Yes, where is our maximum in terms of how much value we can create?
Yeah.
So how do you see this aspect of engagement and participation in this crucial issue?
Yeah, you're so right. That this is the place, we can have all the great ideas that we want and really nail it and be excited about it. But we have to do two things. One is what you're describing is that focus on change management, the communication of it. So there are several things that I do here. One is I talk about looking for the first movable piece.
Mm-hmm.
These first conversations, because you want to be able to, when you share this vision with others, we went and investigated this and we're reporting back and we think we've got a winner here. And the resistance of organizational gravity is to say, yeah, that's cool, but how? And, how are we going to fit it in? And how are we going to resource it? How is this going to work? And so what we want to do is begin to have some things that we can represent and suggest as ways to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I call that the first movable piece. Often you're looking for who is going to sign on to this, what's already in motion that are, because we have reverse engineered it. We have goals now that we think can be, benchmarking tools for the next first 6 months or quarterly in the first year to get us
Mm-hmm.
to a 5-year
Mm-hmm.
measure. And we look for where it can latch on into the organization. We may want to prove it here first. Where can we, partner with other projects already in the works where we can latch on there as well. So that's a piece of it, is the first movable piece. And then it is the other one that we'll save for our, next time, see like a futurist, and following that is lead like a futurist. How do we develop the qualities in the leaders who can hold the center of this
Mm-hmm.
and really have the capacities and capabilities that can meet the future as well? Because otherwise, it's just a plan. I would say the last thing here is that businesses are designed for maximum efficiency. And the way they achieve efficiency is by doing things that they know how to do well. And so we have to appreciate that when we introduce something new to the system, it's going to want to make it into something that's known. And there is a transitional time as it's building its systems around this new idea where it starts to shift a little bit. And so that's part of the change management piece. I really enjoy that work
Mm-hmm.
of, rolling up sleeves alongside leaders and teams to say, now we're going to build something. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go. Let's make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the exciting part, but that's also a very demanding part of all this process from A to X. And Cecily, it's been wonderful to discuss with you, and we could talk another hour, but I think we need to restrain ourselves because we have still a couple of sessions that we want to do. And as you mentioned before, we are gonna explore next time more about how to see the future like a futurist. What is it that we'll be looking at? What type of the issues, developments, phenomena, forces of all kinds we need to be looking at to frame our own business in the right way. And but this discussion today was really about this thinking part, going deep into understanding that to reach any type of the future, you actually first deep dive in and have those open questions and very fundamental question why you are here to do these things. And when you can answer to those questions, then you can go into, we could say, more practical aspect, but we build first this foundational part, which is so important. So once again, Cecily, thank you. It's been wonderful conversation with you. You are very insightful. And I must remind all our viewers that Cecily is really being nominated one of the top female futurists in the world. So you have been really recognized as doing something really, really significant work in this field. So really, I'm so glad and excited and honored to have you on this forum. So thank you very much for that.
It's such a pleasure to be with you and to share our work together. So thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and then the next time we're really going to talk about how to see the future. So thank you for watching us and listening to us, and see you next time around.